while I'm writing the screenplay. And once I finish writing, I give all those songs to my editor. She starts cutting the movie to those songs, and we slowly whittle it down to like 12 or 13 tracks and wind up in the movie. I try to use as much unknown music as possible. I would much rather you have a first-time experience with the song in my film so that the next time you hear that song, your only relationship with that song is in the film, and it takes you back to where you were while you were watching the movie. So in this movie, there's two songs that I know you've never heard before because they were previously unpublished. One is the song obviously at the end of the credits, and the other is the song that plays during the wedding, which is by a guy named Sad Brad Smith, and this is his first published song. But there's other stuff in there that I'm hoping outside of the Crosby, Stills and Nash, which I presume you know. Stuff that I'm trying to find and try to keep my receptors out, so I'm finding original different music to go with the film. On Juno, it was Ellen Page that introduced me to the Moldy Peaches. I was sitting with her in my office one day and I said, "So who do you think Juno listens to?" And I always thought that Juno was going to be a movie filled with Belle and Sebastian music, and not Belle and Sebastian, Yo La Tengo. And she said, "Well, the Moldy Peaches." I said, "I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm old." And she sat down on the computer, showed me a song. I was like, "Oh, this is great." It was just perfect, and that really became the sound of that movie. So I just try to keep my receptors out and am very conscientious of the sound of my films. Apparently, I made a very self-explanatory film. Yeah.
The timing, obviously, you've been working on the screenplay for a long time, but the timing of its release could not be more important. Was that luck, or are you brilliant?
I'm psychic.
Or both?
Look, it's interesting. It completely changed actually how we approached this film, because when I started writing it, again, I was in my early 20s, and I thought I was making corporate satire, similar to Thank You for Smoking, and that's how I approached it. And it's really only as I grew up that I started to take a more thoughtful approach to this film and how we use the location, which is in the midst of a recession. The biggest change we made was that I had originally written these scripted scenes in which people would get fired, and right before shooting I just realized it's just not authentic, and it's not the right thing to do. We were shooting in Detroit and St. Louis, which are the two cities that got really hit hardest in this country, and I just thought, well, why don't we just use real people? So outside of the actors you recognize, like Zach Galifianakis and J.K. Simmons, everyone who gets fired in this movie is someone who actually just lost their job. We put an ad out in the paper and said, we were making a documentary about job loss, and we're looking for people who want to be on camera. And we got a staggering amount of responses, a heartbreaking amount. Just people would write essays and send photos of themselves. We brought in 100 people, we put 60 on camera, and 25 are in the finished film. We would bring them into an office, and it wasn't a hidden camera, but we tried to make it as subtle as possible. They knew they were on camera. And then we would interview them. For about 10 minutes, we'd say, how did you lose your job? How long did you work at that company? How long have you been out of a job? How does it affect your life? What is it like to be looking for a purpose in this kind of economy? And after about 10 minutes, we'd say, we'd like to now fire you on camera. And we'd like you to respond the way you did the day you lost your job, or if you prefer, how you wish you had responded. And what would come out of it were these kind of unbelievable improv scenes where they would start asking about their severance and why them and why not somebody else, and if there was another place in the company they could work, and what are they supposed to do now. And our interviewer had to be very quick on his toes, and it was basically him, and he had an earwig in, and I would talk to him through a mic. And we would just keep these improv sessions going as long as possible. What was striking to me is, look, as a director, my whole job is to make people honest on camera. Is to bring actors in. It's not to make them funny or dramatic. It's really just keep them honest. And to have all these non-actors come in and to be so emotional and so real without any coaxing was an unusual experience that I am going to try to take with me to other films because it really worked well. Yes?
I was in a situation where people were fired. They were not fired. They were downsizing the company. Was AT&T headquarters. They had people who had high-level jobs. We were
women are stronger. I mean, that's actually something I noticed when we actually put out the, when we put the ad in the paper, women responded more than men, and I thought that was really interesting. I thought the women were ready to share their stories more than the men were. And I found that fact, and to actually keep it even, it was much harder for us to find as many men to talk as it was the women. I don't know, it was just kind of an interesting stat that I could have never presumed. But thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I have a question. Did you ever interview anybody that actually obtains that position, you know what I mean, as a flyer? I mean, just
No, my wife was actually fired by one of those guys. So it is a real job, but I never saw a reason to look into it. But for the same reason, I never met any lobbyists while writing "Thank You for Smoking." I only talked to one teenage pregnant girl during Juno, and she was just kind of more floored that I was doing the film. She was just really excited. So I remember once the writer of Die Hard did an interview. And he was asked, how much research do you do? And he goes, none. He goes, I don't know what a detonator is. It's just a good word. And and I thought, that's actually kind of great advice. Like, particularly because I also adapt books. Like, that's kind of how I write. So I presume that the author did a fair amount of research. And at that point, I just take it where I want to and presume, you know, if I've made some glaring mistakes, someone's going to stop me along the way. But I try to, you know, just go from be as creative as possible and do what I want with the story. And if I've made a mistake, I'm guessing someone's going to stop me. Yes?
When this movie comes out, I'm just sitting here and saying to myself, what is the reaction of people who have been in that situation? I go to a George Clooney movie and I expect a comedy somehow or other.
You obviously didn't see The Good German. No.
But, you know, I sit in the other guy's shoes and wonder what kind of a reaction people like that are going to have. What are they going to say about this movie?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I actually don't think this is a movie about job loss. I've always thought that the location of the movie was job loss, but this is a movie about human connection. This is about a man deciding who and what he wants in his life. A man who has to kind of reconcile his relationship with his family, who has to make a connection with someone romantically, and who oddly becomes a father. I always thought Natalie's character really is his surrogate child in the film, and that's what the movie is about. And that this economy and his occupation serve as an interesting location only because he is searching for a purpose in life the same way that people who lose their jobs are forced to search for purpose. So, for whatever reason they come into the movie theater, I presume that is the experience they're going to go through. And if they're so unfortunate to have lost their jobs, I can only relate this to the people who actually came in and acted in the film, who found it extremely cathartic to simply go through that process. So if they found it cathartic, hopefully you can find something in this film, or at least not feel alone. I hope so too. Yeah?
I love the honesty of the ending that you had, George Clooney going off on his own. Did you get any pressure to, you know, have George Clooney's character hook up with a young pretty girl at the end? And, you know, like,
No, it's funny because I expected to get pressure, but I didn't. And I think it was a combination of Juno's success and George saying yes, that no one tried to fuck with me. It was just kind of really nice, actually. I always expected that to happen. Look, and it's funny because I do this every day. I come out and I talk to an audience and I talk about the film. And usually I do get a question of like, did you ever think about maybe ending the movie nice? Or like,